Hello, 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 hello. Welcome back to another stream. I haven't streamed in a while. I did like a review video, it was like 20 something, 30 minutes or whatever it was. I hope all of you are having an amazing day. For those of you that tune into this later, thank you guys for tuning in. So what we're going to be going over today is we're going to be reviewing over all of the box model portion in the CSS part of the lecture, or the CSS lessons. So we're going to go ahead and read through this, and we'll get started very shortly. First, I want to say again, thank you guys for tuning in and watching my documentation of my progress in becoming a web developer. It's going to be awesome. So I've been AFK for a little bit. I've been working. I worked 8 days straight, and I've been tired, and I haven't been, I don't know. I've been not sleeping good. So we're gonna get back into it today. As just to see, let's go ahead and CD into our repos. And let's see what kind of, okay, we're gonna go to, I might remove the CSS exercises and course content. I was, they have this, I'll actually show you. I need to watch it. I just didn't get to watch the full thing, but on YouTube, they got a 6-hour CSS course. And just type in learn CSS. I watched about like an hour 30 something like that. It has a lot of good information. The guy that did the videos, it's like a bunch of videos compiled all together. But pretty cool. Like you can kind of see I've watched some, but I wanted to start this one and just kind of go along with it and learn. But then I got too busy, and so I didn't really get to finish that yet. But what I want to do, excuse me, is review all over the box model. I want to reread through this one more time. Hopefully this will give me a better understanding of what is going on. I mean, I understand now that like this will create a border that's 2 pixels wide, and it's going to be solid, so it's going to be a solid line and red. So there we go, and it'll put a border around all boxes, around all elements. So here it'll say, and you know what? Let's go here, just to show, right? So let's CD into Odin recipes, and let's open that up in our VS Code, and wait for it to open. And then what we'll do is open another page, yada yada, get our index, put it up in here. Okay, so I kind of showed what I had so far, but we'll learn more about that when we get into Flex. But we have to learn the box model. But if we go in here, right, and we add to the alt tag, and we add I think it was border, right, and it was 2 pixels solid red. And then with that, what we'll do is you'll see around every single thing there's going to be a solid red border. So let's refresh the page. There we go, and boom, it shows us a solid red border around all of our elements that we have within inside of our index.html file. So this asterisk applies to all elements within inside of our index.html file, right? So pretty much everything in here, but we're not going to need that, right? Oh, I wanted to, what was it again? Control/. Oh, okay. So those of you using Windows inside of the Odin project, if you highlight a certain section that you want, right, say you want to remove home background, or at least comment it out, right, to see what it does. You hold the left control and then press the / key or the question mark key, whichever one you want to call it, but they're both assigned to the same key. And you so you hold control and then press / and it'll highlight, or I mean it'll comment out your code. So now we have removed that, and we changed our home background class, which was assigned to our body, right? And then we can undo that. And if you don't know how to undo things, it's Control Z, and I think Control Y is to put it back again, in case you want to keep that. Right, so like let's say, okay, let's comment out this, and then Control Y, or maybe not. Okay, never mind, it doesn't do that no more. So Control Z, Control Y. Oh, it does. Okay, Control Z, Control Y, Control Z, Control Y, Control Z. You can also push your changes to GitHub from here, or we can get status. So we have a modified style. We're gonna do git add all, or I think there you go. Git add all. So, and then we'll get status again, and then we can get commit. I think it's -m. Git commit -m, and then showcasing our project to viewers, right? And then we can hit enter, one file change, and then we'll do another git status just to kind of see. So it's ready for us to push that commit. So then we'll git push, and it will push it to our if we go here, React micro files, and when we go to our GitHub, it should show us our new, there we go, updated 15 seconds ago. So there we go. That's how you can validate it. Or we can also go in here and boom, 36 seconds ago we did a little modification to our file, which we really didn't change anything. I was just kind of showing you guys, and I hit save a few times. But now if we go here and we refresh, we have no more changes to commit. Alright, anyway, so now since we got that kind of out of the way, and I have been retaining retaining the information, there's a lot to learn in this field, and for those of you that feel discouraged, look, I've been gone a few days not learning because I've been busy learning a new position at work and so forth, and working 8 days straight, and then of course I got a family at home, so and pretty soon I will be having my own office area type of thing going on. I'm just waiting for a couple of paychecks so I can go get 150-foot Ethernet cable, so that way I can be down in the little we call it a downstairs area, but it's literally like 2 steps and a washroom, and then there's another door, and then it goes to the garage. But the owner of the home originally had the garage, and then they put it into a room to have a second room. So, but I'm gonna be using that pretty soon, a couple weeks, and I'll be inside of my own little area. So that's gonna be pretty cool. But alright, so let's go ahead and continue. So let's learn about the foundations of the box model. Okay. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. So let's start reading. Now that you understand the basic syntax of HTML and CSS, we're going to get serious. The most important skills you'll need to master with CSS are positioning and layout. Changing fonts and colors is a crucial skill, but being able to put things exactly where you want them on a web page is even more crucial. After all, how many web pages can you find where absolutely every element is just stacked one on top of another? Learning to position elements on a web page is not that difficult once you understand just a few key concepts. Unfortunately, many learners race through learning HTML and CSS to get to JavaScript and end up missing these fundamental concepts, which is why I'm rereading this stuff, because I need to make sure I understand the fundamental concepts. Like, I get that we need, it's all in forms of boxes, which we'll get to in just a second, but I guess being able to manipulate the boxes the way you want them is the more I don't like to say hard, let's just say challenging. It's one of the more challenging pieces to make your website look good, because if you don't know how to place things correctly, then nothing's going to turn out the way you want it. So if I go like, oh, not this one, whoops, there we go, right? So I designed this so far the way I wanted it, right? I wanted them to go across like this, and if I add more, I want it to be able to go like this, right? And you can go along the page, right? And then you can click these. I think I already showed you guys in the previous episode. Anyway, make sure that goes okay. But yeah, I want them to be able to go like this, like a line along the line, but once you reach an end right here, it wraps. And one of my main things that I'm having trouble with right now is let me see, is this. Oh, there you go. So see how each of these boxes here, and they're cut off between with the purple dotted line, but you'll see them going down vertically, right, that separate each recipe. Well, the one on the right is longer than the ones on the left, and I want them to all be the same size, so that way they can all like the links, I want them to also wrap within the same size, just how like this one is wrapped in. And these two are the same size. This one is not, I believe. Let me see. So yeah, 1586 by 330. Oh wait, no, sorry. 431 by 270. 380 by 270. Okay, well the height stays the same, but the width is what okay, I want the width and the height to stay the same. So I gotta figure out how to do that with these boxes. But anyway, that's besides the point for this episode. So learning to position elements on a web page is not that difficult once you understand just a few key concepts. Unfortunately, many learners race through the there was some JavaScript. This leads to frustration, pain, and funny gifts. Because all the JavaScripts, oh yeah, I liked when I went here. Yeah, CSS. I found this hilarious. Trying to fix it just right, and you just start making it worse. Anyway. Because all of the JavaScript skills in the world are meaningless if you can't stick your elements on the page where you need them to be. So with that in mind, let's get started. So the overview for this lesson is we're going to learn all about the box model, and we're going to learn how to make sure elements are just the right size with margin, padding, and borders. And that's another thing, that I need to learn a little bit better is margin, padding, and borders. As you can see here, I add some borders around my pictures, but I need to make sure that these are all padded correctly, because see, margin is 10 pixels. 10 pixels, 10 pixels. And that's cool about inspecting. You can look at everything. Anyway, so we'll learn about that. So the box model. The first important concept that you need to understand to be successful in CSS is the box model. It isn't complicated, but skipping over it now will cause you much frustration down the line. Every single thing on the web page is a rectangular box. These boxes can have other boxes in them and can sit alongside one another. You can get a rough idea of how this works by sticking a border on every item on the page like this. And we did that earlier, just to kind of showcase. And you can use the web browser's inspector to add the CSS above to this page if you want boxes in boxes. Okay, so we can go like this, inspect, and if we go to where's the whole page? Boom. Let's add that to the whole page. What? Style. We're gonna do, there we go. Okay. No? Or, oh, I didn't close it, did I? Or maybe I don't need that. Okay, maybe I don't need quotations. And okay. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Let's go to sources. CSS overview. Oh, okay. Gotcha. No, I'm trying to, okay. So to the body. Okay, we're gonna add border, 2 pixels, solid red. No? Or that adds it straight to the body. Damn. Okay. Where would I go to add that? Let's refresh the page. Right? What is this? Okay, no. I just want the whole page. I want the whole page, please. Oh, it's all like separated, huh? So how do we find that class? Okay. Okay, anyway, let's just stop messing with this and let's continue reading, because I'm going to get sidetracked. And I don't want that. Okay. But anyway, we saw how we can add borders anyway. We did it with our little project, the Odin recipes. Okay, so there might be some circles on the above image, but when it comes to layout, they fit together like a rectangular box, or they fit together like rectangular boxes and not circles. In the end, laying out a web page and positioning all its elements is deciding how you are going to nest and stack these boxes. The only real complication here is that there are many ways to manipulate the size of these boxes and the space between them using padding, margin, and border. The assigned articles go into more depth on this concept, but to sum it up briefly, padding increases the space between the edge of a box and the content inside of it. Margin increases the space between a box and any others that sit next to it. Border adds space, even if it's only a pixel or two, between the margin and the padding. Excuse me. Be sure to study the diagrams carefully. So, as it said here, padding is padding between the content and the margin, right? Increases the space between the edge of a box and the content inside of it. So the edge of your box and the content inside of it. So like, let's say this is probably like what, 10 pixels, 15 pixels, something like that, all around. So padding is 15 pixels all around, and then the border probably about 5 pixels or 3 pixels, whatever, and then a margin is the outside spacing between. If there was another box right here, say 30 pixels, there would be a space like right here, and then that's where the next box will begin. This video is a straightforward overview of the box model, padding, and margin. Go ahead and watch this now. It informs everything else. Okay, I think we could check it out. I think it's like an 8-minute video.
This is Webflow Interactions, the only tool that brings all the animation power of CSS and JavaScript into a completely visual canvas. Easily create scroll-based parallax animations.
Okay. In today's video, I'm going to be covering every part of the box model so that you can easily understand how to position elements using width, padding, border, and margin in CSS. Let's get started now. To get started, I just have 2 boxes off to the side here with the text 1 and 2 and background colors of red and blue. And these boxes are represented in the CSS as box 1 and box 2. I've also removed all padding and margin from the page so that our boxes are pushed right to the corners of the page. And to get started explaining the box model in CSS is to understand that everything in CSS is a box of either a rectangular shape or a square shape. And it doesn't matter what you have in CSS, it's a box. Whether it's text, a button, a div, a span, every single element in CSS is a box. And these boxes have different parts. You have the actual content of the box, which in our case is this text 1 and this text 2. You have the padding of the box, and then you have the border and the margin. And we're going to go through all of these different sections and how they interact to form the box model. So the easiest thing to understand is the actual content of the box. If you do nothing to a box at all, the content of the box is just going to fill up the space inside of the box, and the box will be no larger than the content. But if you start adding different things to the box, then you can start to expand the size of your box. So for example, one of the easiest ways to make your box bigger is to use padding. So let's add padding to this element. We'll just add 20 pixels to box 1. And if we save that, you see that our box is increased by 20 pixels on all sides. Everything is pushed away from this one text by 20 pixels. And that is because padding occurs inside of the background of the element. It occurs inside the border essentially, and it goes around the content of the element. So the content is the very most inside thing in the box model. Then we have padding next, which will include the background color of an element. So most buttons in CSS are styled using padding so that the background of the button becomes wider than the actual text of the button itself. The next thing we can talk about is the border of an element. So if we change this border size here to also be 20 pixels, it's going to be a nice purple color, we can see that we get this nice purple border that goes around the padding of our element. So we have our 20 pixels of padding around our content, and then we have 20 pixels of border around the padding, which is around our content. And the very last thing that we can have on our element is margin. So if we just add 20 pixels of margin to our element, you can see that is spacing on the outside of our border, and margin is what we usually use to space 2 elements apart from each other. Padding is mostly used to add background to an element to make it go around the content, and margin is specifically to go around 2 different items to make them spaced apart from each other. So now let's change these values so that we can see the difference between them. So we'll just make them all completely different. If we save that, you see that we now get this element here. And if we right click on this and go down to inspect, we can see the different styles. So if we click on this computed tab, we can see using the Chrome DevTools all of the different sections of the box model. This rectangle right here is the box model, and on the inside, this blue section, this is the actual content of our box. As you can see, it's the thing that surrounds the one. When we highlight it, you can see that it is just the very intersection content of our box. We can specify distinct sizes of our content using the height and width property. So if we set a height here of 100 pixels and we set a width of 100 pixels, you can see that we now have a 100 by 100 square, and this blue section is that 100 by 100. Next, we have padding, which is this greenish color that you can see, and as you can see, it's 10 pixels that goes directly around the word one. You can see it just barely touches it, so this is just around the content, and it also goes outside of that height and width that we've defined. Next is that purple border, which we can see by hovering over here, and it's around the padding, as I've said. And then lastly, this margin, which goes around the element itself on the outside of the border, and it's used to break apart two elements from each other. So now let's do a similar thing to box number 2. We'll actually just copy all of this code down to box number 2. We'll paste it here, we'll remove the margin for now, and we'll save that, and we see that our box number 2 is showing up right here. And now if we add a margin of 60 pixels to this box, you would think that the box would end up moving down because it needs to move 60 pixels further away from box 1. But if we save that, you see that it doesn't actually move further away, and that this 60 pixel margin is the same between these two elements. There's only 60 pixels here and not 120 like you would expect. And that's because in the box model, margin actually collapses between two elements that are next to each other. So since these elements are right next to each other and they both share a margin, whichever margin is the largest is the one that will be used. So if we change this to 70, for example, they now have 70 pixels of margin between them. And even if we decrease this down to 0, you can see that it still has that 70 pixels of margin between them. But if we make this 100, it now has 100 between these two elements. And you can see that by just hovering over here, we see that 100 margin. And if we select box 2, it has that 70 margin, but only 30 more between here and here because this is a 100 margin between the elements. Another thing to note is that if we hover over box 1 here, you can see down in the bottom left, it says that the height and width is 180 by 180, but we actually defined our height and width to be 100 by 100. And that's because by default in the box model, to get the height of an element, it adds together the height, plus it adds together the padding on the top and bottom. So in our case, 10 on the top, 10 on the bottom would be 20. So we're at 120. Does the same thing with the border on the top and the bottom. So we have 30 top bottom, which would make it 60. So now we're at 180 right here. And that's how we get 180 as the height. Margin doesn't account into the height of an actual element for sizing using CSS by default. But if we wanted to change this so that our height and width right here are the actual height and width of our element, what we would need to use is we would need to change the box sizing of our element to be border box. And what border box does is it makes this height and width account for the padding and the margin, or the padding and the border of our element. So let's change this border down to 20 pixels so it's a little bit smaller. And if you save that, you see that if we go to our box number 1, our content section is only 40 by 40. In the other example, without this border box here, you can see it's the height and width 100 by 100. But when we use border box, the actual size of the content gets subtracted out from the border and the padding so that when we hover over this, you see our actual element is 100 by 100. Instead of adding all of these, it just uses this height and this width, and the border and padding just cut into that height and width. As you can see, our padding is still there and our border is still there, but the actual content of our element was shrunk down to be 40 by 40 so that the overall element, everything inside the border, is a total of 100 pixels instead of being 180. When it comes to learning the box model, the easiest way to do it is to use these Chrome DevTools, and you can see each of the different sections of your element from the content, padding, border, and margin, and it even has a nice little diagram so you can easily tell what is what and what you're actually defining. But some good notes to take away is that if you want to space two elements away from each other, use margin. That is definitely the best way to do it using CSS. And if you want to space out an element from itself, you need to use padding, because padding is inside the border, which will include the background color, and margin is outside the border. And that's really all there is to the box model in CSS. One thing that you may notice is that we use this border box property, and this is something that is almost always used in CSS because it makes styling things so much easier. So many times this will get added to the universal selector so that every element will use border box, because it's so much easier when whatever you write as the height and width is the actual height and width of the element, and you don't have to worry about doing math in your head when you make these values. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe to the channel.
Alright, okay, so that was pretty informative. Learned about the box model. I actually really got to use the restroom right now, so I will be back very shortly, and we'll continue on with another stream. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you in a little bit.